Hello there and welcome to the Card Grotto. Today in my Craft Favourites 2015 series I'm going to be talking about tools and adhesives. So I've got quite a lot to get through, so I'm going to jump in straight away with the tools. So first of all, I wanted to share my guillotine with you. I really love this guillotine. This is the Xcut guillotine, which is made by docrafts here in the UK. It's exactly the same as the tonic one, but it's branded differently here in the UK. So I really like this large handle here to be able to push down to cut the cardstock, and at the side there's an extra little bit that kind of hangs off that you can measure to 13 inches, which is really helpful, and that just fits underneath. So it's a large guillotine, but it cuts really well and I'm really happy with it. Next up is some large scissors. These are the Xcut 9.5-inch scissors. Again, the same as the tonic brand. I have a pair that I use for cardstock. This is the blue pair here. And then I also have a pair for fabric, which is the pink pair. They used to come in different colours. Now they only come in white, but that's why I've got two different colours. But I really like those scissors. They're very hard wearing and yeah, just really precise cuts with those. Next up is some smaller scissors. These are the EK Success Cutter Bee scissors and the Honeybee scissors. So the Honeybee ones here I use for adhesives because they've got the coating on them, so nothing kind of gets all gloopy and everything like that on your scissors, which is quite nice and helpful. And then the Cutter Bee ones I like to use for cutting out images, so fussy cutting. They've got a really sharp point on them, and I just really like those. Next up is an essential tool. This is a pencil. This is a mechanical pencil by Faber-Castell. To be honest, any brand would work, but I like these ones just because they've got that kind of spongy grip on the end of them. They're just quite nice to hold. Next up is the Tombow Mono Eraser. I really like this. This is like in a pen form, and it's just a really small eraser on the end. So really good for getting into tiny little areas.
It's really good for kind of getting into really small areas.
And it erases really well. Next up is a couple of pairs of tweezers. First of all, there's the Boots tweezers. Boots is a kind of chemist or drugstore, I guess you might want to call it, here in the UK. These are obviously for, beauty, but I really like them for getting the backings off of tape or foam, foam dots and things like that. They're just quite helpful to have. They're really inexpensive. And then next up is the EK Success Precision tweezers. I really like these. As you can see, they've got a really precision tip on the end, and they're kind of reverse tweezers, so when you push they actually open, which is really nice for holding on to things. So I use them quite a lot for placing down sequins onto my card. Also, they're quite good if you just want to hold a piece of cardstock while you're embossing, so you don't get burned by the heat gun and it just kind of grips onto it, which is quite helpful. Next up is a Teflon bone folder. I got mine from Simon's Stamp, but I believe you can get them from a couple of other places now. This is an expensive tool, and for some reason it's quite expensive, but it really is worth it. And when you fold down, it gives really nice precise folds, and I use it with the Martha Stewart mini scoreboard. I don't particularly like the bone folder that comes with that scoreboard, but I love this Teflon bone folder, and like I said, gives really sharp, precise folds, and it doesn't leave any kind of excess kind of marks on the card when you're scoring it, which is really nice. Next up is a couple of rulers. I really like the T-square ruler. This is clear and I really like it for making sure that things are lined up properly. So I tend to add a line maybe when I'm stamping a sentiment, so that I make sure that it's straight. And then I also like to have a metal ruler, which is really good for when I'm using a craft knife. I'm always worried that I'm going to cut into a plastic ruler, so I really like the metal ones for using with a cutting knife. Next up, I have a couple of masking products that I find helpful. This is the Inkadinkadoo stamping mask paper. I really like it for stamping out images and then cutting them out, and then I can mask with them. It's quite nice and thick, so you can use it a few times, which is quite helpful. So I stick it on the back of stamp sets so that I can reuse them a couple of times. And I like that it comes in that pouch as well, keeps everything together. Next up is the post-it labelling tape. I have quite a few different sizes of this, and I use it quite a lot for different masking techniques if I want to kind of mask off a sentiment on a stamp or anything like that. But I use this thick one here quite a lot for ink blending, so I just add it to the sides of a card where I don't want it. and it masks it off really well. Next up is the 3M Micropore Tape. This is a medical tape. It's really helpful for using in crafts as well. The only problem for me is that I struggle to get the end of it. It kind of rips quite easily on me, but if you put it in a dispenser, there is no problem whatsoever. But I really like it that it's really thin, and I can use it for holding down dies while I'm running it through my Cuttlebug, and it doesn't make a mark at all. Next up is some stencils. I keep them in a little folder here, just so it's quite helpful to flick through. But I really like stencils. I go through phases with them, but they're really nice to emboss with if you run them through your die cutting machine as you would an embossing folder. So it kind of gives a really nice impression, but they're really good to ink through with distress inks in particular, or you can spray through them, embossing paste. Just a really good tool, and they're quite inexpensive as well, and they last forever. So always a good tool. Next up, I'm going to talk about adhesives. My most used adhesive by far is the Scotch Advanced Tape Glider, or known as the ATG. Really like it. It is a little bit larger in size than some of the other tape runners, but I find it perfectly easy to hold, and I don't have massive hands. It's a really strong adhesive, which is really nice and just really easy to use. Glides on perfectly, and it's quite a nice kind of thin size as well, but like I said, it holds really well. The refills last absolutely forever. Takes me a long time to get through a refill, which is really good because that's quite cost effective as well. Next up is the Scotch foam tape. I use this quite a bit. I really love these kind of large rolls. They take a long time to get through. This is obviously one that I've used quite a lot of, and then I've got a full size here to show you how big they actually are. I get mine from Amazon. They are a little bit more on the expensive side, but like I said, it takes a long time to get through, and I just add a little bit onto the back of the roll here to make sure that I conserve as much as possible, just because it is quite expensive, but I really love that for adding dimension onto cards. Next up is the same kind of thing, but this is a Scotch clear tape. I do apologise for everyone else who's not in the UK, because I do believe this might be a UK only product, which is quite surprising. It doesn't happen that often, but this is basically exactly the same as the foam tape in terms of size and everything like that, but it's just clear. Probably the equivalent would be Cool Tack. I know you can get that in quite small rolls, but this is quite a large roll, and again takes forever to get through. Next up is Stick It sheets. Again, really like this adhesive. Really good for adding onto the back of cardstock if you're going to run it through your Cuttlebug, or any die cutting machine. I just happen to have the Cuttlebug. Really good for especially like word dies and anything like that, kind of intricate dies that is going to take a little bit more trouble to get the adhesive onto the back. Really nice and thin, and yeah, it sticks really well as well. Next up is the Multimedia Matte. Again, really love this adhesive. I have one of those precision tips on the top of my bottle, just so that I can get kind of small parts on it. But really like this adhesive just because it dries matte, so if you get any elsewhere you can't really see it, which is always helpful. Next up, not exactly an adhesive as such, but this is foam sheets. Jennifer Maguire kind of shared this with us, that you can use this instead of like the foam tape, and then you can just put adhesive onto the back. I like to use the Scor-Tape for that, and I just find it sticks really well, and it's quite a thin tape as well, otherwise known as Be Creative tape. They're exactly the same thing, but really nice tape. And I buy the foam sheets in bulk, so I buy a pack of 10, and again it takes a little while to get through them, and it's a little bit more cost effective if you buy them in bulk as well. That was a look at my favourite tools and adhesives of the year, and I do have a mini giveaway for you today as well. This is 2 stencils from Simon Says Stamp. It's the Falling Heart stencil and the Ledger Drop stencil. I think they're really pretty. So to enter the giveaway, you just need to head over to my blog, where there'll be instructions on how to enter. It is open internationally, and it will end on the 5th of January 2016. Thank you so much for watching today, and I hope to see you tomorrow for my next instalment of my Craft Favourites 2015.